well, dang it. I thought I had made this change, created this new habit, quit this habit, and now I have fallen back into old patterns. I guess I haven't really changed. I guess I haven't actually made progress. It didn't stick. Wrong. Today we're going to be talking about why that is such a myth, because failing or slipping back into old patterns of behavior is actually part of the change process. And today we're going to be talking about the psychology and some of the neuroscience behind this. So whether you're trying to quit smoking, improve your relationships, overcome social anxiety, and create more meaningful connections, making and sustaining behavioral changes is not a linear process. Which, yes, we've heard this. But what does it really mean? Today we're going to be talking about the stages of change model, which was developed by James Prochaska and Carlo Di Clemente. And this really provides a roadmap for, the stages of change. This is going to change how you look at creating change in your life forever. And where you will stop doubting whenever you fall back into old patterns of behavior, because you'll know it's part of the process. Okay, if you are new here, hi, my name is Jewel Homan, and I am here to try to help us all be more connected in this world, because I really believe in centering connection in our lives. And when we do that, we have more fulfilling lives. And I think the whole world would be better if we centered connection a bit more. And I've had the great privilege of working with people from all over the world. I have 5,000 hours of working with people from all over the world on social anxiety and creating more meaningful friendships. And so I have been using the stages of change model to explain things to them a lot. So the stages of change model is a framework, and it breaks down the process of behavioral change into 6 stages. Now, we're going to briefly go over this, but we're mostly going to be talking about, again, why falling back into old habits is part of the process. Because if you understand that and you accept it, it's going to help you so much in the future. So, we have pre-contemplation, which is not really having an intention to change. We have contemplation, which is an ambivalence about change. We have the preparation of change, where we're planning on taking action. We have the action, and where we're actively working on change. We have maintenance, trying to sustain new behaviors, and then we have returning to old behaviors. The last step here, the relapse. Relapse is part of this. I also want to do my due diligence and explain to y'all that this model is not appropriate for every single thing. It's not appropriate for addressing structural barriers like poverty or systemic discrimination. It's not appropriate for biological, neurochemical solutions. But it is extremely effective when we understand it for gradual, intentional changes, like managing anxiety on some level, because that could also be biological, like quitting smoking or building a healthier routine. So let me tell you a little bit about how the brain functions at each stage. So the pre-contemplation stage, again, is no intention to change. It's kind of denial or resistance to change. And this is when we have in our brain this default mode that's just going through the habits and the thought patterns. And when we're in this stage and we think about creating a change, again, whether it's quitting smoking or managing social anxiety, it can start to feel a little threatening, because our brain seeks predictability. And by creating a change, even if it is something that we want, like to quit smoking or like to stop, being so socially anxious and overthinking after every single social event, it can be but if I'm not smoking, then how will I deal with stress? So it might become a threat in that way. Or it might become a threat with, if I stop smoking, I'm not going to be able to hang out with my coworkers as much outside. If I manage my social anxiety and stop overthinking as much, I'm probably going to miss certain things and miss the ways that people don't like me if I stop being as socially anxious. Whatever it might be. In this stage, it feels threatening. So we moved from change feeling threatening to we're starting to weigh the pros and cons of change. We're starting to think about, if I stop smoking, yes, I won't go outside with my coworkers, but I will be able to walk up and down the stairs without feeling out of breath. Our brain starts to weigh the pros and cons. There's some cognitive dissonance going on. Then we have the preparation stage, planning to change. Now, for those of us that are recovering perfectionists, we got to watch out for this stage. Because this stage is where our prefrontal cortex, is really the decision-making part of our brain. It's the super conscious part of our brain. It is our goal-oriented behavior part of our brain. All right? Super logical, normally, up in there. And we are starting to plan and think about, okay, what would this change look like? So if we stick with the smoking example, which I don't know why I came up with that, but if we're sticking with the smoking example, and somebody is now like, okay, I know I want to stop smoking. So what I'm going to do instead when my coworkers go outside is I'm going to have a little knitting thing, and I'm just going to knit a little bit and do something with my hands. So that way I can deal with that urge to go outside with them. Whatever that might be, right? So creating a plan for how we want to change. Now, the reason why I said for us perfectionists that we gotta kind of watch out for this stage, we can develop what's called a perfectionistic fantasy. If you've been around for a while, we know what this is, but it's always important to hear about it. A perfectionistic fantasy is where we think that everything will go so perfectly, and we have this vision of ourselves, of us never messing up, of the process going just wonderfully, and just never making the same mistake again, handling everything with ease and poise, being unbothered. So, an example of a perfectionistic fantasy that I really had, that I know a lot of y'all might be having, and it's something just to be aware of, is in social events. I would have this fantasy of, I'm going to absolutely charm everybody, and everybody is going to love me, and I'm going to say the right thing at the right time in the right way to get the right reaction from people, and then I'll get to feel so good about myself when they do that. Now, this felt really good, this fantasy, when I was daydreaming about it, when I was planning to, maybe speak up more in social groups or share more of my authentic thoughts in a friend hangout. But what would end up happening would be I would not be perfect at a social event. I would fumble to say something. I would say something and be like, that's not actually how I feel. I would see somebody's micro expressions and could tell that I didn't get the exact right reaction from them. And then I would leave that social event and be devastated that my perfectionistic fantasy wasn't real and didn't come true. So, something to really be mindful of, because it feels good in the moment in this stage, but it hurts our confidence drastically when we are human and we do mess up and we're more critical of ourselves. It can really, really hurt your progress to just be in this fantasy and not be like, okay, I won't be perfect. That's not realistic. The next stage is the action stage, and this is the behavioral change in progress. So this is where parts of our brain are that work on habit formation. They're starting to reinforce the reward of positive outcomes. This is where our prefrontal cortex, again, our really conscious part of ourselves, our goal-oriented decision maker, is really in charge, being like, yes, you said you were going to make this change. So if it's, again, with smoking, it's that conscious behavior and you're just starting to do it and you're like, yeah, I'm going to knit and not go outside with them. If you are adding a workout to your routine, you're like, yeah, I'm going to the gym. And it feels very effortful and conscious, where you're like, yes, I'm doing this, even though I don't really want to right now, because there's a lot of focused effort, again, coming from the prefrontal cortex. And this is required until these new behaviors become more automatic, right? Then there is the maintenance stage. And this is where our behaviors and our brain is starting to rewire. That focused effort is starting to make new neural pathways in our brain. They're starting to connect. And every time we do show up and we use our social confidence strategies that we learned in coaching, our brain starts to wire more and more that way. And this is where the maintenance stage, the sustaining stage, is really a part of it. Now, we're making new pathways. It's taking a little bit less conscious effort. So if you can imagine with the maintenance phase, a path where people have walked down on this grass over and over and over again. So you're starting to see the grass become more matted, more dirt is showing, and it's starting to become a little worn of a path. And then we have the relapse stage, returning to old behaviors. Now, our prefrontal cortex worked hard during the preparation stage, the planning stage, the action stage, the maintenance stage. It was taking a lot of conscious effort. And as you are doing this change, it's starting to become a little bit more natural feeling. It's starting to become a bit more of an automatic feeling. That pathway, again, you can see some dirt. Lots of people, if you can imagine, have walked on this pathway. But then there's this other pathway of your old habit, whether that's social anxiety, smoking, not working out, and just vegging out on the couch. And let's say that pathway is a road. It's paved over. It's been practiced so much. Now, those pathways are going to be reactivated when you are stressed in particular. And so your brain's going to be like, oh my gosh, do not want to work out. Or, oh my gosh, I just want to go on this paved pathway to smoking, to overthinking my social interactions, right? Now, when we start to walk on that paved road, that paved pathway of our old habits, that's where a lot of us really start to freak out. We start to think we haven't made any change. We start to think that it means something horrible about us, that we're not disciplined enough, we're not capable enough, we're just not enough. Something is wrong because we didn't make the change. And in reality, we completely miss, no, we've been really walking on this dirt pathway over here. That change has happened, literally in our brains, our neural pathways. That road is there. We did make progress. But this road has been established for a long time and has been paved. And so, of course, when you're not putting as much conscious effort, of course, when you get stressed, you're going to want to go to the road, the easiest pathway that's really been there. And what happens for a lot of us is when we have these relapse moments and we make it mean all these things about our capabilities, about how we haven't made any progress, we start to want to stay on the paved pathway. We get even more stressed and maybe smoke even more cigarettes. We get even more stressed and want to completely avoid the thought of working out because we feel so bad about not working out that now we're, watching hours and hours of Netflix more than we even normally did before, where we start to get anxious and overanalyze, wow, am I ever going to be confident because I'm overthinking the social situation again? We start to hang out on that pathway longer because we're experiencing doubt or shame, and we want to feel better, and those pathways had made us feel better in the short term before. Y'all, self-criticism is going to make you want to hang out on the pathway that you don't want to hang out on anymore, rather than the new. And this is why understanding this is so monumental and why it helps my clients so much, because a relapse, if you will, is not a failure. It's part of the process, especially for behaviors that are rooted in long-standing neural pathways. And when you understand this, I think it gives you so much authority where you can be like, yes, I see you, brain. Now it's time to come back to this dirt path and make it stronger. And now I want to lay down some bricks. And then you go through the cycle again. The stages of change. The stages of change are something that we're repeating over and over and over again, where we are cycling upwards. And let me tell y'all, I see this a lot with clients with social anxiety, but also as an entrepreneur with ADHD. Wow. In the past 5 years, when I first started compared to now, and how I manage my ADHD and my workload, the amount of times I have cycled upwards, wild difference in how I am able to stay organized, prioritize, and get work done. And part of that is once I knew the stages of change model, I knew that being harder on myself was just going to make me feel worse. And then it was going to be even harder to motivate myself to get back to work and to look at my priorities again. So being kind to yourself during relapses, during you slipping back into old patterns is so crucial, because under stress, your brain defaults to old habits because they require less effort. And when you are being hard on yourself for falling back into old patterns, you're not exactly not stressing yourself out. You're adding more stress. So what are you going to want to do? Less cognitive effort. And so, little spicy take here. If you want to be more resilient, more self-disciplined, and really create change faster, you gotta be more self-compassionate with yourself. That's actually not a hot take. I think, dare I say, that is just a damn fact. Most underrated thing ever, self-compassion. Because when you are compassionate with yourself and you're like, hey, I see you, brain, wanting to go down this paved road, these old patterns because they made you feel a little bit better in the moment. I see you. You're allowing yourself to soothe your stress, and then foster resilience where you can come back to the dirt-worn path that you have created with these new, healthier habits. When you are compassionate with yourself, you are going to self-soothe, regulate, and you're also going to speak kindly to yourself and more encouragingly. And what's going to help you really show up and go back through the stages of change to create even more change, whether that's confidence, not smoking, working out, whatever it is, using compassion with yourself, and then being more encouraging, the encouragement is going to help you do that. We knew that change wasn't linear. We were like, okay, I know change isn't linear. We knew that being kind to ourselves is important, but I just know now that you hearing this and understanding the stages of change model can really empower you with awareness to keep going in those times, to be kind to yourself, to understand the why behind why these things matter. Now, the model, again, can apply to social anxiety. Now, social anxiety also has a biological component in many ways, but social anxiety often involves like deep-seated patterns, and this can help us break that down step by step. Exposure is one of the best things to do for social anxiety. Hello, rejection therapy, right? Rejection exposure. That helps us partially because of this reason. So one thing I want you to understand, if you are applying this change to something like social anxiety that's maybe not as concrete as building something into your routine, but how you are showing up and being, that the stages of change process does still apply here. And I hope that if you are struggling with social anxiety and you really want to use this model in that way, you now know that a bad social experience doesn't erase progress. So here are 4 tips for navigating relapses. Reframe relapses as learning opportunities. Ask yourself, what triggered this and then had me go on the paved pathway? Use these insights for your strategy. When I was doing this myself with my workload, I realized that part of what made me so distracted would be I would go to post something on social media, but the algorithm being so damn addicting and feeding to me, I would end up wasting an hour on social media and then be really upset about it. And so, because I saw that pathway and was like, hey, I see what's going on here, then I got to strategize more and be like, okay, I need to have stronger screen time limits on my phone. I need to figure that out. And now, as some of y'all know, I use this app called Opal to block my screen time, and so I don't get really sucked up into social media stuff. Now, way back in the earlier days, when I was helping people with just confidence, one of my clients, we were working on weight loss and healthy eating. And so for him, he found that he did really well eating at home, but then when he went to work, he would get whatever was available at work. And so then we use that insight to strategize and be like, okay, how can we make sure you have things that are really convenient at work to keep up that healthy eating? Reframe relapses as learning opportunities. Learn from them. 2, I know I already said it, can't say it enough, practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that setbacks, relapses, are normal. There's nothing wrong with you. Your brain is going to want to make it mean that you're not capable enough, that this is a reason why change isn't for you, that you can't have what you want. Ugh. No. And then 3, return to action quickly. The sooner you re-engage, the faster you'll reinforce the newer, healthier pathways. Now, again, I want to caveat, don't just be like, nope, I'm ignoring this, completely jump back into it. I think it's helpful to have a moment, to have a feeling, and to be compassionate with yourself. But then you want to re-engage with the cycle that you're building, with building that new worn pathway where then you could start maybe adding bricks to it, right? And then 4, use emotional regulation tools. Taking a second to deep breathe and mindfulness to help you manage your stress, regulate yourself, is going to help you from doing relapses in the future. Because again, these old pathways, these paved pathways, are triggered by stress a lot of the time. So by understanding the neuroscience behind each stage, especially the relapses, and embracing relapses as part of your process, I know that you are going to become so much more resilient and confident, because y'all, every time that you show up and make any effort towards this, even after a setback, it brings you closer to your goals, to the transformation that you want to have. So I would love to know what this episode means to you. This concept right here is probably arguably my client's favorite one of all and changes their entire lives. I know it has mine. And if you want to apply this model to getting over social anxiety and becoming more authentically charismatic, I made something just for you. So check out the freebie below. I have 2 trainings that were used at the largest women's conference in my state, in Michigan. And those 2 trainings are how to belong and how to turn people you meet into friends. And they're completely free, and you can get them down below, and you can apply that to become a more connected person, a less socially anxious, more socially delighted human. All right, y'all, that's all I have for you today. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Thanks for joining me on the Socially Delightful podcast. I'm Jewel, and I'm truly so grateful that you came and hung out with me today. If this podcast meant something to you, it would mean so much to me if you left me a review so that way I could keep making content that you love. And if you really want to make my whole day, share this podcast to your Instagram story and tag me at Connection with Jewel so I can shout you out. Or send me a message and let me know what resonated with you or what you want to hear next. And I'll see you at the next episode.